Howlett from Ohio's Electric Cooperatives in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from Champion Fiberglass. Champion Fiberglass is committed to America's electric cooperatives by providing strong, durable, American-made fiberglass electrical conduit manufactured in their triple ISO certified facility in Spring, Texas.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Molly Christian. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is an important partner for electric co-ops. FEMA provides essential funding, coordination, and expertise to co-ops after hurricanes, floods, and other events, allowing them to restore service faster while limiting cost increases for consumer members. Almost half of co-ops have received FEMA public assistance since 2020, and every community is just a disaster away from needing federal support. Mike Bjorklund, General Manager of the Florida Electric Cooperatives Association, describes how widespread the potential need for FEMA support is.
As I understand it, 99% of all congressional districts around the country have experienced some sort of disaster in the last decade. For us, after the multiple storms we've had beginning really in 2016, it's just become more and more important that we have this program to work with.
Despite FEMA's importance to co-ops, the agency is far from perfect. Many co-ops deal with funding delays, red tape, and a lack of consistency in accessing FEMA aid. For this episode, we'll hear from NRECA CEO Jim Matheson on why FEMA is so essential to co-ops and how a bipartisan bill in Congress, the Fixing Emergency Management for Americans Act, could make FEMA work better. We'll also talk to Mike in Florida and Vermont Electric Cooperative CEO Rebecca Towne on their experiences with FEMA and how the system could be reformed to speed reimbursements and improve transparency. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you.
Just to start things off, why is FEMA such an important partner for electric co-ops after hurricanes, floods, other disasters?
Well, you used the right word in the question, FEMA partner. They really are an important participant in allowing cooperatives to make the important investments to restore their systems after they've been damaged in a natural disaster and not expose ratepayers to the costs of those repairs. It's a long-standing relationship. It's one that matters a lot to electric cooperatives. It's the right thing to do for non-for-profit, consumer-owned electric utilities like electric cooperatives. And that history matters. And it's been really important in so many ways. It can work better, and we're going to talk about that. But let's not kid ourselves. At the outset, it's important to state this is a really important relationship, an important partner of NRECA's members, and something that we want to promote in terms of making it work as well as we can.
You did a good job of showing why FEMA is so crucial to co-ops, but we know that co-ops have had issues over the years accessing FEMA public assistance. Talk a little bit about some of the hurdles we've had working with FEMA.
You know, there are a number of challenges that our members have experienced. Some as simple as different regions of the country, different FEMA offices interpret the rules differently, and that's frustrating. That's not unique to FEMA. A lot of federal agencies suffer from that at times, but having a consistent application of the rules and how it works is helpful for everybody because then you know what you're working with. Beyond that, of course, members have had some frustrations at times in terms of you may want to restore a system in a way that you're required to do it exactly as it was before the disaster, and there may be a better way to do it that prevents failures in the future if there's another significant storm event, for example. And it's not like we're trying to gold plate it and build something completely different, but there are times when instead of having poles go in one orientation where it floods a lot, you could move them a couple miles in one direction and it would be better. FEMA's rules don't allow that, so that's a source of frustration. And another source has been just lack of communication about when things are going to happen, and often they get dragged out for a long time. And electric cooperatives get put in a position where they go ahead and make the repairs to restore the service, to keep the lights on for their consumers, and then they're left accruing interest on all the money they've put out to pay for those repairs. And when FEMA ultimately reimburses them, they reimburse on the original cost of those repairs, but not the interest. And for some cooperatives, that can add up to a lot of money. So those have been some of the frustrations our members have felt over the years. Don't get me wrong. This is a really important relationship with FEMA, and in general, it's important that they have been there to help our cooperatives restore their systems. But it could work better.
And what do some of those issues mean for co-ops when they go to rebuild and their consumers? What do some of those hurdles end up? What are the impacts of those issues?
Well, at a top level, I'd just say anytime there's uncertainty, it's more difficult to do your job well. And whether it's the electric cooperative, whether it's the consumer members, when they're asking what's going on, that's never a good thing. But more importantly, there are times when co-ops need to have the ability to implement the repairs in a not just a timely way, but in an informed way, where they know that these repairs are going to happen. They want to build it in a way that's more resilient in the future than what it was before. And they want to count on making sure they get reimbursed in a timely way, because the interest, as I said, when interest accrues on expenditures and FEMA doesn't reimburse that interest, that can add up to a lot of money. And the only entity that pays that is that member at the end of the line.
Right. So this is households and businesses having to pay more to get their service back up and to make it more resilient.
That's right.
NRECA is backing a bill in Congress that could address some of these issues and that would address some of these issues. Talk a little bit about what's in the bill and kind of how we work to help make sure that legislation is good for co-ops.
This is really exciting. This piece of legislation, this reform bill for FEMA, got off on the right start, quite frankly. You had two members of Congress, the Republican chairman of the committee and the lead Democrat of the committee, work together with their staffs to draft the bill. They sought comment from various stakeholders, including electric cooperatives. So we had a lot of opportunity to sit down and work with these folks to help craft this bill in a way to really address a lot of the issues that we care about and make meaningful reforms for FEMA. And as a result, they introduced the bill in a bipartisan way. When a committee voted on it in the House, it passed by a vote of 57-3. So that tells you that you've got good bipartisan support. And so NRECA has been at the table the whole time helping with this legislation. Now, what does the legislation do? A couple of things that are really important. Number one, it really tries to create a streamlined process where you say within 120 days we make a decision and get the funding going when there's been a disaster. It says that if you want to make investments that create a more resilient set of infrastructure in the future, and it's not exactly rebuilding as it was before, there's a process to help make that happen. It does reimburse for interest. So if for some reason it doesn't get paid out quickly, which happens sometimes, even though legislation calls for the reimbursement to happen quickly, if interest accrues, the legislation requires interest to be reimbursed as well. So those are important fixes for FEMA that could really make a difference for electric cooperatives.
And the benefit, obviously, for the consumer members is, again, a less expensive rebuild if they get that interest covered, and also more resilient infrastructure, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain areas that are subject to some type of flooding, for example, or in hurricane-prone areas where, we may have infrastructure lines or whatnot that were built, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And if we're going to rebuild them, there's better ways we know how to build them today. And so the idea that when we rebuild, we're not under some constricted set of rules where we have to do it exactly as it was before, but we can actually build something that's going to be better in future storms. That just seems to make sense. Now, when we implement that, because once the bill gets passed, that's going to take some work to make sure it's implemented in a fair and equitable way. But I think this is a really important step in the right direction.
Yeah, and it could actually save, government investment and taxpayer investment later if these systems can withstand storms and hurricanes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the same thing if you're repairing your own house. I mean, if you have a situation and you make sure you invest the money when you do a repair to make it stronger for future events, that's a good decision. And you don't gold plate it with some crazy amount of expenditure. You want to be reasonable in the way you approach that. And that's the way electric cooperatives will have to do that to make sure it does pass muster in terms of FEMA reimbursing for that type of investment. But having that flexibility to build back in a better way, I think that's an important part of this bill.
Yeah. And NRECA, in addition to the work they did to help make this bill more effective for co-ops, we've also been doing a lot of work on the Hill and in the public, raising awareness of this issue. Talk a little bit about what some of our work is there in terms of whether it's Voices for Cooperative Power or other channels. How have we been seeking to both speak to lawmakers and also engage the members to kind of support and advocate for this bill?
Well, in the advocacy world, there's lots of different tools in the toolbox you can use to advocate for legislation in Congress. And in this case, we've got legislation that really affects every member of NRECA. In fact, the data we pulled showed that in the last 15 years, there's been a FEMA event in 433 of the 435 congressional districts in the country. So I get that hurricanes are large-scale storms and perhaps get a little more press attention in the moment, but this type of thing can happen anywhere. It can be a fire, tornado, ice storm, flood, and a hurricane. And so all of our cooperatives at some point are at risk of this happening. And so this is a great time to deploy the whole cooperative network in advocating for this legislation. And of course, we have our lobbyists that work for NRECA and are up on Capitol every day, knocking on doors and advocating for membership. And that's an important part of advocacy. But we've really worked hard to engage the rest of our membership on this as well. So we've done a call out to all CEOs of all of our members, because the CEOs are leaders of those co-ops and the directors of those co-ops as well, in terms of engaging with Congress and encouraging them to contact their members of Congress and ask them to co-sponsor this bill. And then we've deployed our broader grassroots network, which is called Voices for Cooperative Power, which is a grassroots network that's based on social media platforms to get consumer members involved in advocating for electric cooperatives. And we've done a nationwide activation of Voices for Cooperative Power to encourage all those folks to also contact their members of Congress. And by the way, we make it real easy for everybody. You just go to our website, electric.coop, and there's a link to click, and you can send a letter to your member of Congress on the FEMA legislation. So it's really easy to do. We're excited to have this be a national activation for this. We do want to get more and more co-sponsors. I mentioned at one point this bill is through a committee in the House, and it passed by a vote of 57-3. But that doesn't get you over the finish line.
Right.
And there's lots of competing bills that want floor time in the House of Representatives. So we want to rack up the numbers and show a huge number of members of Congress, and both parties are sponsors of this bill. That gives us the capacity, or the lead sponsors, I should say, gives them the capacity to say, this is really important. It's got broad support. Let's move it. And that's what's going to get it out to the floor of the House of Representatives. So we're all in. We're working hard to get as many people to co-sponsor this bill as possible. And we're asking everyone, both in our membership and member owners of all our cooperatives, to get involved as well.
And how is that involvement going? Are we seeing good numbers, good reaction from our CEOs, from our members, and how is that advocacy going?
It's been a good start. We've got about 40% of all CEOs so far have contacted their member of Congress. We want to get to 100%, but 40% is a nice way to get started. In Voices for Cooperative Power, we're up to over 25,000 people have emailed Congress so far, but I think that number is not high enough. We have hundreds of thousands of activists in Voices for Cooperative Power, and we're going to continue to beat the drum and ask people to contact their member of Congress, because we really want to have a show of force on this one in terms of how important it is to the communities that are served by electric cooperatives.
Well, that sounds good. That's a good start, but obviously we want to see momentum keep building. So are there any kind of pieces of advice for either communities served by co-ops or co-ops to just kind of encourage those numbers to keep going up?
Well, listen, I think, first of all, every co-op ought to ask every employee to contact their member of Congress, and every board member. Those are the table stakes to start. Everybody who works for a co-op ought to be in on this one, because we should all recognize the value of this bill. And right there, that's a lot of people. Secondly, electric cooperatives can encourage their consumer members to be part of Voices for Cooperative Power as well. You know, in the past, we've used Voices for Cooperative Power, our grassroots network, for certain state legislative efforts, and co-ops within a state have really been great at getting their consumer members to sign up and be part of the activation. So the more we can get folks aware of the situation, the more energy we can get behind it. And time is short. You know, here we are with less than 3 months left in the calendar year, and often Congress moves legislation at the 11th hour. And we want to have our bill so highly supported by so many members of Congress that maybe it can get attached to some must-pass bill that's got to be done by the end of the calendar year. So we're really trying to press this hard and get as many people involved as possible.
Yeah, because like you said, this is something that any co-op could be in a position to need access to. I mean, this is not particular to a region. It's not particular to distribution co-ops, GNTs. I mean, it's just something that any co-op at some point may find themselves needing. Support from FEMA.
There's no question. There's a history where so many electric cooperatives across the country have had this situation happen to them, and it's going to happen in the future. And we wish we could control the weather, but we can't. And so it's important for us to have this relationship with FEMA on as firm of a footing as possible. And the opportunity to reform it in a way to make it work better is something that we want to seize this moment. As I said all along, we've got this great bipartisan support in Congress, but the same with the Trump administration has indicated a need to make FEMA work better. And so this is an opportunity to make FEMA work better.
Great. So an important agency, but one that could be made to work even better for co-ops.
Yeah, in the interest of continuous improvement, I find co-ops are always trying to find ways to make things work better. We want to make FEMA work better as well. That's in FEMA's interest, and it's in electric cooperatives' interest as well.
Well, Jim, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we can do a podcast in a few months that says this is law now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Let's pause here for a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, I'll talk with two co-op leaders on their work with FEMA over the years and the changes they'd like to see to FEMA's public assistance program.
Along those lines is made possible by American-made Champion Fiberglass. Fiberglass conduit is a lightweight, strong alternative to traditional conduit materials. It offers no burn-through, fault resistance, temperature tolerance, ease of installation, and lower materials and installation cost. Plus, durability and corrosion resistance help contribute to lower total cost of ownership for America's electric cooperatives.
I'm Andrew Sparata from McKinsey Electric Cooperative in Watford City, North Dakota. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. Next, we'll hear from Mike Bjorklund with the Florida Electric Cooperatives Association and Vermont Electric's Rebecca Towne on their experiences with FEMA. Hey, Rebecca and Mike, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for hosting this conversation on such an important topic.
Each of you has dealt with FEMA over the years after storms and disasters in your state. Rebecca, I know some of the counties you serve are in the top 10 since 2011 for natural disasters. And Mike, I know Florida has experienced a lot of hurricanes-related flooding. So maybe just how about you each tell me kind of how FEMA has helped you in after these disasters and sort of what your experiences are with the agency?
So for Florida, FEMA is critical. And it is around the country. As I understand it, 99% of all congressional districts around the country have experienced some sort of disaster in the last decade. For us, after the multiple storms we've had beginning really in 2016, it's just become more and more important that we have this program to work with. And our missions line up. I mean, it's all about safety. It's all about trying to get the community put back together. And for us, just the same as it is, I'm sure, with Miss Rebecca, electricity is the linchpin. If your electricity is out, the community is down. And we have to get that up and running and do our part to help not only our consumer members, but these regions of the state that have been hit so that they can get their lives back together and get back to normalcy.
Yeah, I would agree. And for us, Vermont Electric Co-op has experienced 10 FEMA events over the last 15 years. So absolutely a lot of weather disasters, all at different times of year. We've seen flooding, ice, heavy wet snow, severe wind, all of them causing significant infrastructure damage in different ways. And each time that we have had a major level event, FEMA has been there to help us recover from the massive costs of restoration. And then I'll get into this later, but also build back stronger to mitigate the impact of future weather events, because there's always one right around the corner.
Yeah, and in addition to just helping with emergency restoration, Rebecca, I know that Vermont Electric has taken advantage of some of the resiliency funding. Talk a little bit about how you've utilized that FEMA support.
Sure. So it's called FEMA 406 Hazard Mitigation Grant Funding. It's a mouthful, but it's a wonderfully proactive federal program for areas that have been hit by a FEMA event. FEMA wants to support rebuilding in a way that minimizes future risks and losses from disasters, and we want that too. So in Vermont, to give an example, in Vermont, when our lines were built in the 30s and 40s, Vermont had a lot of farms and sheep. It was just hillside, and we built through those fields that are now woods, and we have trees everywhere. And it's beautiful. The Green Mountain State's beautiful, but it is not great during a major wind or ice storm. And so while we spend significantly on vegetation management, we have been doing FEMA projects, a lot of that to help with resiliency of moving some of those lines roadside. So we just finished a project on Camel's Hump, which is, as you can imagine, quite a mountain. And we did some undergrounding. We moved a lot of lines roadside. And this has been an area that many of those 10 events over the last 15 years there was significant damage in that area with a lot of cost to repair. So we are hopeful that this will improve the experience of those members, but also reduce costs both in future FEMA events and just overall for other wind events. And while we just finished that one, in general, we've been, for each FEMA event, we try to apply for hazard mitigation grant funding. And for where we have completed projects and have data, we have experienced an 80% reduction in outage frequency and a 66% reduction in outage duration. So it is working, and that the funds to be able to help us invest in resiliency help us do things that we otherwise would not be able to afford to do.
How would your efforts to rebuild from disasters, how would it be affected if you didn't have this federal support? What would that mean for your members? What would that mean for the costs to recover and the degree to which you can rebuild stronger and better? I mean, what would happen if you did not have this program and this agency as a partner?
Electricity is, again, it's a linchpin, and we take it for granted. I say this as the royal we. It's there every time we flip the switch on any given day. I think we have done a fantastic job of getting our reliability up to the 99.9% outside of these events. But it's just, without FEMA, you're talking about this commodity, this product, this service that is so critical to everybody's day-to-day lives and how they function, extending how long restorations take, because when we know we have the safety net, we know we have FEMA as a partner to work with, we're able to get these things done faster, and we're able to get these things moving quicker. And that means that at the end of the day, the public is back up and running, and the machine's working again. And without that, I'm not sure what would happen, but I think it would definitely slow down restorations, because you have to worry more about the enormous cost that comes along with it. And that's not going to meet our consumer member expectations of when this power should be restored. And so without FEMA, it just becomes an entirely different ballgame that I don't want to imagine, quite frankly.
Yeah, well said, Mike. I think it's without FEMA support, it's slower, it's longer, it's and certainly in terms of some of that future-proofing resiliency work, just less of it, we would be able to afford less of it. And so all of that impacts, at the end of the day, our consumer members and anywhere in the U.S. that experiences disasters, it impacts those areas, and that covers a lot of our country for sure.
So you've outlined nicely how important FEMA is to help recover after storms, restore service, keep costs down. But we know that it can be kind of cumbersome to access some of these programs and kind of deal with the paperwork, deal with the process. Can you also describe some of the issues you've encountered when trying to work with FEMA? Kind of describe the process and maybe what some of the hurdles are.
Before jumping into that, Molly, I think we'd be remiss without giving a hat tip to the administration for highlighting exactly what you're talking about, and really recognizing Congress and our good friends in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and a whole host of others who have been proactive in trying to take this up and get this done. As you know, there's currently a bill moving through that addresses a lot of these issues that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about having public dollars come down to us as not-for-profit electric utilities, there has to be a measure, a standard to show that we're being good stewards of those dollars. We understand that we're accessing this public assistance, and we want to be sure that we're demonstrating what they're asking us to do to receive these funds is being done. However, I think it could be done more efficiently. And I think if you're looking at what the ultimate goal is, we don't have the luxury of other subrecipients. We don't have the luxury of doing a demolition, planning, designing, rebuilding over a period of time to make sure that we're getting everything, the best deal, and a long time over, or a certain time to get that accomplished. For us, we have to get it back up and going as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. I think that's the key. And so we're making expenditures up front to rebuild, fix whatever we've got to do, and get the power back on. So it's critical that we have a program that continues to recognize the electric cooperative's importance in this whole process, and also recognizes that the faster we can get it done and check the boxes to show that we're being good stewards of these public dollars, we are going to be doing a real service, not only for our consumer members, but for the American taxpayer.
So well said, Mike. And I want to just highlight that we also are big fans of the FEMA Act of 2025 and are really excited it's working its way through. At the core of that act is a recognition of the incredible value of FEMA. And so it really underlines the importance and ensures its continuation at the federal level. And as you've heard us talking, that of all of the things is the most important, absolutely. And also, it can be a very administrative heavy, very long timelines. It can take 2 years, up to 2 years to get reimbursement for some of these things, and lots of back and forth because there's not always great understanding of some of the uniqueness of the electricity business versus restoration of other types of infrastructure. And so this bill also does, I think, what we try to do as a co-op too. It's like we do great work, and also how could we be a little bit better? And it focuses on a few areas that could improve around faster timelines and clarity and consistency of process, and improving access to the resiliency funding, which has been so critical for us, and I think critical for building resiliency for co-ops and infrastructure across the country. So really excited to see that bill working its way through, and glad to see some of those improvement opportunities are built into that and under consideration, and that so far, at least what we've seen, there's been really good support for the continuation of FEMA and its great work.
And Molly, if I can just piggyback on one thing Ms. Rebecca just said, the ability to have predictability and certainty in these processes so that we can know from the start what we need to be working on, what we need to have available, that helps us become more efficient for the agency as well. So, we understand this is a partnership, and we're willing to dance with our dance partner, and we're very grateful to have them. And having these things on the old topic right now being discussed, if we can get some things taken care of along those lines, it's going to help everyone.
Great. And yeah, thank you for touching on that bill, the Fixing Emergency Management for Americans Act. You guys did a good job of running down what some of the key provisions are. But I know one important part of it, and this was an amendment that I know NRECA really pushed for, but it would allow reimbursement for loan interest for loans that co-ops take out to help rebuild after disasters until they get that FEMA support. Mike, I know that's been an issue for you guys to kind of get that interest back. Can you talk a little bit about that issue and how that's been challenging over the years to get those costs covered?
Yes, ma'am. I find interest very interesting. We've been working for several years, getting bipartisan support on this bill, not only the FEMA Act, but what we very lovingly refer to as FLIPPR, the FEMA Loan Interest Payment Relief Act. And essentially it goes back to where we were just a few minutes ago. We have to make all these repairs and rebuild everything all at once up front. So that means we have to go out and take a loan to cover these costs. And you're talking about sometimes millions, sometimes tens of millions, to the bigger storms, which can be hundreds of millions. And it doesn't matter what size of a co-op you are, it's all relative. So when you're taking out these big loans and you're paying the interest portion off, or however the mechanism works, essentially you're just adding to the cost of the storm. And the longer it takes to get these dollars returned through the public assistance, through FEMA, the longer we're having to pay these interest rates, the more our consumer members are having to suffer from it. So by putting in a mechanism by which we can get that interest replaced, it encourages everyone to continue to work faster and to try to, again, not incur any more costs than absolutely necessary, but make sure the agency remembers that this is there, this is happening. We have to pay these monies up front. And as long as they're willing to stand behind us and understand that the quicker we get this paid off, the less it's going to cost the government, the less it's going to cost our consumer members and the taxpayers.
We've touched on this, but what do you think the benefits of these reforms would be in terms of service, in terms of cost? What are the benefits of having this process improved and, yes, getting loan interest reimbursed? What does that mean for members at the end of the line?
I think you said it, Molly, service and cost. That's it, right? And so, in Vermont, over half of our members are on fixed incomes, and New England in general tends to have pretty high rates. So every penny counts. And so that FEMA assistance is critical, particularly when there's a FEMA event that likely affected our members in some other way as well. So they've got the electricity impact, but also other impacts that are happening in their towns and communities as those towns are trying to rebuild and figure out what they're going to do as well. So certainly from a financial perspective, and then as I mentioned, that hazard mitigation funding, it helps us do much more infrastructure improvements than we would otherwise be able to do. So it absolutely contributes to better service as members rely more and more on electricity for everything that they do, from, medical appointments to, heating their homes or whatever that looks like. Every minute you take off an outage matters, and every penny you take off a bill matters. And FEMA takes off a lot of minutes and takes off a lot of pennies. So that's really valuable.
Agree, 100%. If you're looking at this as terms of, you're traveling a great distance, I would rather have a rabbit on roller skates than I would just be trying to walk this through any kind of terrain. So the speed is always the key, being able to get this money in, process, let us know exactly what we need to do. So we're providing exactly the information, making sure these processes are standardized so that the certainty is there, the predictability is there, and we're giving the government what it needs, and the public assistance is coming back to where it needs to be in the fastest manner possible.
Great. Some great examples of how FEMA and its public assistance program both are very helpful to co-ops, but the ways it could be made even better. Rebecca and Mike, thank you so much for joining me today and just highlighting this important issue, this important program, and just, again, the ways it could be made more effective for co-ops. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, ma'am. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and our sponsor, Champion Fiberglass. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Molly Christian.
I'm Brenda Tesh from My Energy Cooperative in Rushford, Minnesota and Cresco, Iowa. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.